Well, welcome back, everybody. Again, we've got Jack Bailey in studio. Jack's running for Congress for the Republican ticket. He's got some good competition. We've had a couple of those guys in. But let's move on to Arizona. Arizona's gotten a lot of press here lately with their new illegal immigration law. What's the right solution for controlling our borders, Jack, in your opinion?
Well, if you don't mind, let me mention something on Arizona. It's a cry for help. We've had these laws on the books for a generation now. Federal government completely refuses to do something about it. Obviously, Texas and California have done a lot about theirs, and it's created a corridor through Arizona that basically says, "Please come through here." And finally, Arizona's standing up and saying, "Stop." So it's a cry for help. But in terms of the illegal immigration population, it's fairly simple. We've got to stop. We've got to do something at our border. We've got to secure our border. That's not it doesn't seem to me a real objectionable point. But we have to reduce the incentives for illegals to stay here. There's a couple of ways of doing that. With the E-Verify would make putting holding the corporations' feet to the fire is a good idea. Certainly talking about the 287G type, empowering local and state government seems to be a pretty good idea to me. We can certainly talk about, I think, citizenship for children of illegal immigrants. I still don't understand how that is the case. In fact, I read recently that 90% of the Arizona under 18-year-old, they're already citizens. I think, again, we reduce the incentive for illegals to come here illegally. And one of the biggest incentives is that they can come here and have a baby, then immediately the baby's a citizen, and they can bring in more of their family into that. So if we can all agree that 10 to 13 million low-skilled workers competing against our low-skilled workers here in the United States is not good for our country, then I think we can probably agree on a number of solutions, some common-sense solutions that can reduce the incentive for them to come here and reduce the incentive for them to stay here.
Yeah, because I think one of the first areas that you attack is the employers. I lived in Georgia for several years, and in the construction industry.
Sure.
They really liked it because they could pay Hispanic workers less than they could pay other people. And now, these people are very hard workers. I mean, I watched them build the house next door to me. But what bothered me more than anything is that's your first layer. They are not going to come here if they're not going to get paid, if they can't get a job. And employers, that bothers me more than anything, is that part of it.
I saw an interesting comparison of a citizen making $25 an hour in a construction job and an illegal making $15. By the time you take out taxes, take out insurance, take out all the other fees that the citizen has to pay, the illegal's not paying for insurance. Not paying. He's getting food stamps because he's getting paid under the table. So he can get all kinds of government programs and get things free. Ends up with all kinds of more disposable income.
Yes.
A lot of which he sends back home. It doesn't spend in this country.
That's right.
Well, I've got an interesting question to ask you, because somebody said this to me the other day, and I thought it was so simple, but I thought it was really awesome. Why do they want to come anyway? Because they know that INS and everybody is looking for them. Why do the Hispanics in Mexico continue to come? I mean, why do they continue to come?
This is the land of freedom. I mean, it's the old wall test.
Opportunity, wealth generation potential.
But for instance, this area, a lot have illegals have left because the work has dried up.
Right.
And in areas,
the whole nursery business has dried up a lot.
Right.
That's right.
So I think it still goes back to the question, and with your business expertise, and as an employer, don't you think you can be almost our front line in a sense and not hire that person?
Oh, absolutely. And I could say, I've never hired, just for the record, an illegal immigrant.
I wasn't implying
maybe wasn't implying that. Okay.
No, absolutely not.
They should be a front line. I can say as an employer, one of the reasons that we have trouble hiring anybody is because of the regulatory environment. So putting more regulations on an employer is not necessarily a good thing. So, but that is, I think the E-Verify is one of the processes that I'm starting to see that can put the employers. But I think the broader question here, if you don't mind, is talk about why are employers in a position to where we can't compete globally unless we have below market labor? And that's the real question here. People say we can't manufacture in America anymore. We can't produce in America anymore. So what are the conditions that sees to it that we have a 10% unemployment? I'll tell you one of those. I'll tell you those conditions. As an employer, as a businessman, what I know and what I see every day is the most the government can do is to create the conditions for economic success. And those conditions are simple, and they've been tried and true historically. We reduce taxes. You know, our corporate tax rates are the second highest in the industrialized world. You know that our corporate tax rates, I think, are around 35%. You know what China's are? 0. Wow. So right off the bat, if you're an employer here in America, you want to manufacture or produce something in America, you're a 35% handicap right off the bat. Then you go to the regulatory environment, whether you're talking about greenhouse gases, whether you're talking about the trial attorneys, whatever you're talking about, it increases the cost of doing business in America from a regulatory environment. So right now you're looking at, okay, I'm an employer. I want to put capital at work. I want to take risk. What we're doing is we're reducing the reward by increasing the taxes, ordinary income taxes, capital gains taxes, all going up. We're decreasing the reward, and we're increasing the risk because of our litigious regulatory environment. So the question, or if the question is how are we going to create jobs, and why is it that we have to go to Mexico for our employees, is because we can't compete, and it's not because of trade issues. It's not because of the cost of labor. It's because of regulatory and tax issues making it prohibitively expensive to produce and manufacture in the United States. And one of the reasons I'm sorry to speak so long. It's the primary reason I'm running for Congress is get the politicians out. In fact, Lincoln Davis was here at a Tullahoma event recently, and his comment was, somebody has said, hey, we've got between a 12 and 22% unemployment in the 4th District, depending on where you're looking at. And they said to him, how are you going to help us create jobs? And his response was, I'm going to paraphrase here, I'm here to learn from you. And I thought, that's a leader. No, we got a lot of sheep in Washington. We have very few shepherds. And I dare say Lincoln Davis is one of those sheep. He has been out of the private sector so long, first elected in 1978, he doesn't know how to create jobs. Well, I can tell you how to create jobs. Same way Ronald Reagan did it. Somehow we go back to FDR and Japan during the 90s for our examples in terms of we just spend more money, that's going to solve our problem. We spent, and Lincoln Davis is a part of this. They borrowed and stole $1 trillion from my children and your children, our grandchildren, to create jobs. They don't know what they're doing, and they need to send some businessmen to Washington who do.
Yep. I hear it, Jack. It's reducing taxes. You nailed it. How do you compete with a China that has no corporate tax like that?
Well, but China, it's a communist country. You can't compete because the government props up everything in China.
Well, in terms of the actual salaries that we had a Wilson golf manufacturer in town, and I knew the folks that were going over. They were moving to China. The average employee in China was making $170 a year. That was it. It was like $2 an hour or whatever.
Right.
And you just can't. There's no safety.
Okay.
But
the difference too, though, is the American people. For instance, there is a jewelry person that I really like her designs and everything. I buy a lot of hers, and I pay a little bit more because it's made by Americans.
Sure.
And the thing is we have become a consumption nation versus a creative, entrepreneurial, and it's not all the government. It's because I think historically as Americans what's happened is I think we've become complacent and a little bit lazy.
Terry, I love what you're saying because I tell people all the time. This is, I know you're, Greg. I don't mean to throw you off here. This is a culture. This is a culture thing. We measure value, and let me explain it this way: we measure value and wealth in terms of how many apples we have, not how many apple trees we have. Right. You're exactly right. We've turned it to consumption, and the basic way of looking at it is that we're spending. If you've got capital, and then you've got income, we're spending our capital to live, not our income. We're not saving. We're not investing. So it's bigger than, it's bigger than government. It's part of the culture. And there's 24 counties in this district. I'm going to be in every one of those 24 counties talking to community leaders, parents, education institutions, and talking about let's get back to saving and investing again. So I appreciate that, Terry.